Ik eich satini gwanalchis hati ade chat disi yuduasa kuyadis tleich yagi ya yagi katleich yawachi yadis. So it's the month of fish or salmon chat disi, and that's what we call July in Lingit. It's the first day of the week, it's Monday, and one day has passed this month. A little bit about the month of July. Chat Disi is salmon month, when the fish first return. A variant name for the month could be Atkata Disi, or fat moon, when the animals are fat. I've heard different things from different locations. Some consider July to be the first month of the year. Others consider more April, when you can harvest herring eggs. But yeah, welcome back. Today is our second to last day of the class for the term. And so here we are, July 1st. We'll have class today. And then on Wednesday will be our last class, July 3rd. Today we'll continue our translation and study of the video Kohanti. And we'll talk a little bit about coming and going from the beginning Tlingit workbook. So just a review of our work so far. We've been working on the first minute of Kohanti, and we've been using the reference material Lingit Kalnigi workbook, and we'll continue to watch it. So again, whenever I do transcription and translation work, the first thing I do is watch my recording, either in full for the very first time or just for the first segment that we've been working on. So we've been working on the first minute, and then I like to practice pronunciation. Basically, start to engage with the recording a little bit more each time I view it. So first time I'm just watching it, enjoying it. Second time I'm pausing it and repeating after the speaker to practice my pronunciation. Since we're lucky enough to have the transcript of this story written in the publication Lingit Kalnigi workbook, we can also practice our pronunciation from there. So far, what we have from 0 seconds to 1 minute. Line by line, we can practice these. If you want, Kaya, to repeat after me. Yata kunach kusiat.
Yatach chunach chusiat.
Yeah. So let's do it by phrase. The first two words this winter. Yata.
Yatach
And then very kunach.
kunach
And the weather got cold. Kusiat.
kusiat.
Yeah. So we translated that whole phrase. We broke it down by phrase, and then we translated the whole thing as this winter the weather got really cold. And then this line, we'u utiqawe hastukusti.
Say it one more time.
Oh yeah, we could go line by line. We'u
We kuu
utiqawe
utich owe
hastukusti.
hastu chusti.
Good, yeah. In that community, their way of life became difficult. Next one is kunach.
Chunach
Nikutlain.
niuk klein.
Ka kat uagut.
Ka kat uagut.
Yeah. A very big sickness came upon the people. And this is where we left off. So we translated each word, but now we need to turn it into an English sentence. So the first sound, repeat after me. Ka.
Ka.
Yaniukjit.
Yaniukjiet.
Kut kushuahi.
Chut chushuachich.
Okay, good. And so literally each line that we have here means and, they are sick, given by, and people died off. So one thing I'll mention is that our word order in English is different from our word order in Lingit. So yaniuk means they are sick, and then jit more or less means by the hands of. So I would translate this as if I'm gonna do it literally in the slide, I would switch the order. From possession means jit, and I'm gonna switch the order because it's different word order in Tlingit. Oops. Given by, they are sick. So now we're kind of looking at our literal translations. Unique is they are sick. Jit is given by. And I'm just going to start to kind of piece things together and say, given by, they are sick, people died off. So, can either of you think of another way we would frame that in English? And the previous line was, a very big sickness came upon the people. And then we have and.
Would we keep in like by the hand of, or did you
Could
want it from the possession?
we could go by given by, or if something kind of makes more sense in English, we can go with that way. But how are we sort of thinking of this idea?
From the sickness that people died of?
I would, yeah. That's how I would frame it. And so, yeah, again, this is where we're interpreting um, the story and we're taking, I'm not going to say art, yeah, maybe artistic license, is that what it's called? Like, we're making decisions as the interpreters and the translators and how we want to frame that. And that's just to say that the way that we choose to put it now doesn't have to be set in stone. This is our continual, work in progress. Um, Good though. Okay, so just reading the English from the top, the this winter the weather got really cold. And when they say this winter, that's sort of a storytelling element. They're talking about this winter of the story. In that community, their way of life became difficult. A very big sickness came upon the people, and from the sickness, people died off. So here we have a string of sentences that we've been able to translate that make coherent sense. And that's really lucky to be able to have that when we're doing interpretation. Um, if when I try to do this of a speaker who maybe gets up stage and gives a speech, I have a pretty hard time piecing this together. But because Rene has simplified the words and said them really slow so that we can repeat after him and understand what he's saying, and also provided the Lingit transcription, we're having a much easier time with this. And so that's just why I'm thankful that we have this resource. Okay, so our next line, now that we've gotten this far, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines that we were able to translate. Now we're gonna watch it again. And so we'll start at 0 and see how we get. I think the story starts at like 20 seconds or something.
Yatak kunach kusi art weku mutik away hastu kusti. Kunach nik plain ka cut a gut kaya nik cheat kut kushu he. Yashat katsku sahan you do a sock away to in ank. The cut has away do nakas cow the eat.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. This time I'll replay it, just the section that we're going to look at next. And keep your eye out for the mood of what's going on in the story. And just see if you can kind of piece any meaning from it, just from watching it with the video.
Nik plain ka cut a gut kaya nik cheat kut kushu he. Yashat katsku sahan you do a sock away to in ank. The cut has away do nakas cow the eat.
So, any observations about the general storyline from that short section?
That they introduced her.
Yeah, good. Nice. So, on that note, okay, so our last line was, and from the sickness, people died off. This next line says, "Ya Yashadgatsku Sahan Yudu Wasak." And so this one I interpreted already. Let's practice the pronunciation. So repeat after me. Ya Yashadgatsku.
Yashatchatsko.
Yeah, that means this girl. And then say, Sahan Yudu Wasak.
Sahan you do a
You
sock.
do a sock.
Good, okay. And what does the second line mean? Sahan Yudu Wasak. Oopsie, sorry. If I say you khat duwasak, I'm saying I am called. So if we take out the khat, then it just says you duwasak. Then what does it mean?
She is called?
Yeah. So you could say she is called Sahan. We're using the pronoun she because the previous line is yashitkatsku, which means this girl. One thing I would note is that you duwasak means it can mean a singular they, so it could be he, she, a singular they. It's not like English where it specifies gender in the term. As long as you're talking about a third person that's not me and it's not you, it's they, then it's gender neutral. But we know from the context from Yashet Gatsku that we're talking about a girl, that's why we applied she. And how would we interpret this one?
Could we do this girl is called Shahan?
Yeah, this girl is called Sahan. Oops, Sahan. And then Rene used commas here, and so I'm going to put a comma in the English translation. This girl is called Sahan. That just basically lets us know that the next line will complete our thought. So this is not a whole sentence on its own. It's kind of like getting somewhere. It's going somewhere with it. So we have yeah, Shatkatku, Sahan, Yudu, Wasag, and then Awa Duin Al Takatas Awa. So let's practice just the pronunciation of each word. Repeat after me. Awa
Owe.
du
Oe.
uh-huh. Duin Al.
Duin al.
Green.
Okay. And then Stakat
Stachat.
Hus
Hus.
Hush.
Awa.
Owe.
Away.
Good.
How
I uh-huh.
how do you remember it's shachat
Uh-huh.
with the L and the D? The
This one?
yeah.
How do I remember the pronunciation?
Yeah.
Doing this one, what helps me is to focus just on the L first. And then it's kind of tricky. You go straight from an L to a D. Da. And so when you make a singa L, you start out just like you would say a voiced English L, L. And take a note of where the tip of your tongue touches your teeth. So for me, it's on the back of my top front teeth. L. And it'll be the same for the thinga L, the voiceless L. And basically, you do that same positioning, but instead of voicing it, activating your voice box, you just breathe out the sound. So it'll sound like. And then just do it nice and slow, and just go. You're gonna go da cut.
Sta. Sta. Stachat.
Yeah, good. That was perfect. So you notice you're kind of finessing with your tongue. You're going from to da, and it reminds me of like with playing guitar. Sometimes you move some of your fingers, but not all of them. And sometimes you move one a certain way and keep one still. It's kind of like that. Like you keep the tip of your tongue where it is when you're making that sound, but then the top of your tongue flicks the top of your mouth. Da. Yeah, so try that nice and slow. Da cut.
Stachat.
Yeah, good. Nice. Does that help? Yeah, you sound good. Da cut. And yeah. So just keep now that you're starting this relationship with this sound, with this word, um just keep it up. Like keep your eye out for it, to cut, and make a point to say it. Make a point to bring it into your sentences if you're gonna practice speaking Tlingit. Um, Usually when something catches your eye like that, it's for a reason. So just kind of like build this friendly relationship with that word, cut. When we talk about takatas, so we have this one I interpreted for you. Duin au, it means their family. Du means their, like it's not mine, it's not yours, it's their. We're talking about something that belongs to Sahan. And then in au is family. So I interpreted this for us, her family. And so we know we're talking about her family. The previous line is this girl is called Sahan, and then something about her family. Awa literally means that is, but in a story, the way it's added into these lines, it'll often be used when a speaker is thinking about their next line. So you can also think of it as a pause or a transition where storytellers put a lot of thought into the way they say things and what they're going to say next. So that's how I'm thinking about these two occurrences of awa in the sentence. So it'll sound like awa duin au takatas awa. It's kind of like adding something. So for now, we're not going to interpret the awa. Let's focus on takatas. Do you guys know what either of these words mean? Cut or hus? Okay, so this is a good chance to go in our book, and of course we can look it up in the dictionary, but as I mentioned last week, this Lingit Class workbook has a specific exercise that's focused on this story. And because of that, we're going to use it to look up the word. So I'm going to type in cut in my search bar. And of course, the first place it takes us is the transcription that we're working on. But I'm going to keep scrolling because there's also a glossary that pulls all of the words from the story. And you can see here the Kahanti glossary and puts them into a glossary for us. And it just makes our life a little easier. Okay, so we have to cut, and we see it means all or every. So I'm gonna paste this into our translation. The cut is all or every. And then hus, when we talk about pronouns, I'm gonna look it up first and then I'll talk about it. So hus. If we scroll up in the glossary to H, here we have hus as a pronoun. So it can pluralize kinship terms. Let me see if I need to zoom in. This term comes after most kinship terms to pluralize. A few kinship terms use the diminutive plural yun. Let me find. Okay. This one is with a hyphen hus. We're just looking for hus on its own. And here it is in the previous line. Okay, so hus, that's standing alone, as it is in our sentence. We just have hus on its own. Is an independent pronoun, meaning them all. The third person plural independent pronouns are not linked to anything grammatically and are most often used in phrases like ya duchat, here I am, and uhan aya. Other independent pronouns are listed below. So these are the ways that we refer to people without using their names. So htakatas would be all of them. One thing I would say about this type of pronoun is that sometimes it can be confused with like part of a verb, but what we are noticing here is the high tone A. The high tone A tells us that we're talking about people as a whole, as their own entity. So hus, we had them all. So how would we interpret this? We have her family, all or every, and them all.
It's part of a sentence. So it's like we don't have like exactly what it is.
Yeah,
So
you're right. Okay, so let's look at the previous line. This girl called Sahan, her family, all, them all. You're right. Let's look ahead at the next line and see if we can interpret it based off the context. So the next one is repeat after me. Dunach has kaudikit.
Dunachas chaudichit.
Ah, good. So duh, we remember is there. And then we need to look up nak has kaudikit. Again, this has is low tone. And so that's telling us that it's part of an action in this example. So multiple people doing this action, whatever this action is, kaudikit. So that's just a preview. Now let's look up the words. I want to look up dunak and haskaudikit. So let me see if I can find nak. And I'm going to search away from. So we have a relational noun, away from it, leaving it behind. Away from. And then I want to look up huskaudik. So here we have it in our transcript. Here we have it in our list of verbs that were compiled. And then Renee listed it in all of its forms since it's related to our story. So the root word kiet means to move or go. And then with all of these prefixes stringed together, it specifically means to leave, to go, or to die. So for O, meaning object, the same O we see here, for an object, a group of people, to all leave or go, or to die off. And so here we have huskaudik, the group went, or if we're replacing went with these alternative meanings, it could be to die. When we look at her emotions in the story, when they're talking about that part, she's crying. So let's just kind of recap that.
On you do a sock, away to in ark. The cut has away, do not has cow the eat.
Okay, so she's sad. Any guesses of what this means?
They are no longer with her.
Yeah, they are no longer with her. And then we could use that same interpretation. Dunak haskaudik. Dunak together would mean like away from her, even though du is like there. It's like from her. I think of it as like from where she is, from her, they left her. And the previous line, her family, all of them, we could say something like maybe all of her family. All of her family are no longer with her. So I'm deleting they because the previous line is all of her family are no longer with her. Good. Any questions so far? Okay, let's continue. Now I'm going to start it from the beginning and play it all the way through to the next line.
Yatak kunach kusi art, weku mutik away has to kusti. Kunach neek plain, ka cut a gut, kaya neek cheat, kut kushu he. Yashat katsko, sahan you do a sock, away to in ark. The cut has away, do not has cow the eat. Yashat katsko, sahan. Kunach tulli an, katlets ak, kainach awe kudzati. Ya ka shata hanich, de tulla ani, a dach ya wada, ka wasa, ka ich de shi, a jawe a toot a jiwatan awe, has to seek chunich nach satit.
Okay, that was a lot. Anything you pulled from it just from that quick watch?
They were talking about her again, yeah, Shaha.
Yeah. Yep, they're talking about Sahan. And so our next lines. Go ahead and repeat these after me. Ya shatkatska.
Ya Shatkatsku.
Yeah, Shotkatsku,
Good. Sahan.
Sahan.
Saham,
Kunach.
Kunach,
Oops, I have a typo, sorry. Tullaan.
Totally on.
Um,
Yeah,
Totally
good. Uh-huh. And then let's do these last two together. Qhlitsaaq.
on. Saw.
And then the last line. Tleinach.
Leinach.
Owe.
Awe.
Owe.
Chudziti.
Chudziti.
Udziti.
Okay, so we're talking about Sahan. The last line was this girl called Sahan. All of her family are no longer with her. So then we have this again. Yeah, you guys remember what this means?
Girl.
Yeah, good memory. This girl. And we're just remembering that from a previous line when they say it before. Yeah, Sahan, you do what's up. So we have Yashat Katska, and then Sahan is Sahan. Interpreting this as this girl Sahan. And I'm adding a comma because we have a comma in our transcript. Now we're talking about her and we say anything jumping out at you meaning wise from these four words?
Very.
Yeah, good.
Maybe ant.
Yep. And good. And then we have Tusha'an and Tlitsaq. So first I'm going to look up Tusha'an. Tusha'an. So we see it's a verb. And here we have it listed, meaning they are kind. So I'm going to put it in here, they are kind. Since we are talking about Sahan, we know it's she is kind. The way we know we're talking about a singular person versus multiple people is that there's no hus here. If it said hus tusha'an, we'd know that this they is a plural they. They are all kind. But there's no hus, which just means we're talking about a third person. And since the previous line is talking about Sahan, we know it means she. She is kind. Oops. And then we have this other word. We need to look up Tlitsaq. What could that mean? Let's see. Ambitious. Okay. For O, or object, same O we're seeing here, to be ambitious, energetic, hardworking. Tlitsaq. So we can use these. They are ambitious or they are hardworking. And then let's look at our next line since, actually, yeah, the sentence ends there, so let's interpret it. So we have this girl, Sahan, and then very, she is kind and ambitious, energetic, hardworking. How would we turn this into a more coherent English sentence?
The very, is it just for kind or is it also for like ambitious?
Good
Is she
question.
very kind and very ambitious, or is she very kind and ambitious?
Good question. I don't know. Let's take a stab in the dark on the translation.
Very kind and ambitious.
Okay. So we'll do, she is very kind and ambitious. And then you can see for the interpretation, it could also mean she's energetic or hardworking, but we're gonna keep these in our list of ideas, and then if we interpret the whole story and we're like, oh, ambitious wasn't quite the right word, we want energetic or we want hardworking, then we can change it, but that's why we leave all our notes in here. And then I'm gonna put a period because that's the end of our sentence. And then we have one more sentence in this 1 minute segment. Let's see, let's take a listen.
Khunach tulle an, khatlets ak, kleinach owe kudziti.
Okay, that was it. So, any guesses on these, the meaning, or anybody have you seen them before? If not, we can enter them into our search bar in the book. So here it is. And then we have it in our glossary for Kohanti, and it means one, specifically one person. Smart is a good guess. There's another word that sounds like this that means smart, and we'll look that up after. So Tleinach, we have one person. One person. Awe is, they're adding emphasis or pausing. And then Kudziti. So let's look up smart in the dictionary. Here it just has the theme. I'm gonna find it for they are smart. Smart by comparison, so we have kudziti, which has all the same prefixes. It's an aerial k, meaning, well, I won't go into the meaning. K, it goes plus d, so we hear this d, and then it's an s classifier. So kudzege and kudziti sound really similar because of their prefixes. But then when we look at the root word, ge means smart, and then what we have is the root t. So we're gonna look this up and see what we find. Put the T. And here we have it under, let me scroll down to the root of the beginning of the entry. So we have the same prefixes, k, a plus d, and then the classifier s. And that means to be born, to exist, or to live. So for object to be in existence, for object to be born, or for object to live. In some cases, speakers will use a first-person singular subject. Okay, that's a lot of grammar. I was born there. We have an example sentence. Is your mother still living? And then if we look at the different forms, kudzati means they exist or they live. So I'm going to put they exist or they live. And our previous lines told us that unfortunately her whole family is no longer with her. So and then when they say she's very kind and ambitious, but since her family's no longer with her, I'm going to infer that she lives alone. That's how I would interpret this. She lives alone. Did you guys does that sound right to you? Okay, so we interpreted the first full minute, which is fun. So from the top, we have this winter, the weather got really cold. In that community, their way of life became difficult. A very big sickness came upon the people, and from the sickness, people died off. This girl is called Sahan. All of her family are no longer with her. This girl, Sahan, she's very kind and ambitious. She lives alone. Okay, so we're getting an idea for her background. And that's our first full minute. Any questions or comments before we move on? Awesome. Let's talk about the weather. So the beginning Lingit workbook, page 319. Take a quick look at this and then we'll move on to our translation. Oh, weather. Here we go. So in our story, we see this term, the second line of the story, or the first line. And I mentioned this last week. When you talk about weather and they add this W in to the prefixes, it lets you know that we're talking about something that the weather did. So it could be past tense. It could be something from a story that's a time before now. It could be that the weather became that way. But think of it as, we call it perfective mode. Think of it as being a completed action. In English, we call it past tense, but in Tlingit, it works just a little bit differently. Rather than being based on time, it's based on whether or not an action was completed. So kusiat has this W, and we're going to look at the perfective mode of weather just briefly. So some examples that we want to look at. If we say, how was the weather? We would say, repeat after me, wasa kuwati.
Wasa
Awesome.
Huati.
Yeah, and really round your lips on that W and let people know I'm talking about how was it. And it's a nice long O. So one more time, wasa kuwati.
Wasa
Awesome.
Huati.
Good. And then we're talking about the weather was good. We're not saying it is good, so that's why it's long. And then we have this W. So repeat after me. Kuwake.
Kuwake.
Good. If it was cloudy, we would say repeat after me. Kuchiguz.
Kuchlikus.
And then the weather was hot. Kuwata.
Huata.
This is the one we saw in our story. The weather was cold. Kutsiat.
Huseat.
Yeah, and we have a pinch T at the end. We'll make it really sharp sounding. Kusiat.
Huseat.
Good, okay. The weather was foggy. Kudikwats.
Hudikwats.
And if the weather was bad, Tlell kuwshke.
Sheikh
Lesh
Khushke.
Kushke.
This one is new to me. The weather cleared up or it stopped precipitating. Awadak.
Awadak.
Awda.
Okay, good. And those are just the examples that relate to our tense for talking about the weather. So now we have a full minute translated. We're gonna start from the beginning and then continue on. So enjoy your work. You recognize the full first minute, and then keep your ears open for things that you understand in the next minute.
Yatak kunach kusi art. Weku utichawe hastu kusti. Kunach nik klein. Ka kat uagut. Kagya nik cheech. Kut kushuahi. Yashat katsku sahan yutu wasak. Away to in ark. The cut has away. The nakas cow the eat. Yashat katsku sahan. Kunach tushe an. Katlets ark. Kainach awe kudzati. Yaka shat the hanich. The tutla ani. Atach yawada. Kawasa ka ich the shi. Ajawe atut ajiwatan awe has to seek chunich nach satit.
Okay, so something happens. Any phrases jump out at you guys? Let's practice just the pronunciation of our new lines. So we have all the way to here. We've gone all the way to Tleinach. So repeat after me this line that we just finished on. Tleinach
Fenach Awe Kudziti.
Good. And the next ones we'll do just a couple at a time. So this phrase is capitalized. We're talking about a specific person. So repeat these three after me. Kasha dehanich.
Shadhanich.
Yeah. And then whoever this person is, we're talking about this one. That's why we say ya. So say the whole line. Ya kasha dehanich.
Yaka Shadhanich.
And then the first two words of this next line, repeat after me. Dutushaani.
Dutushaani.
And the next three, Adach Yawada.
Yawada.
And don't worry too much about meaning right now. Just focus on reading along and making the sounds. So next three words, Kawasa.
Kawasa.
Ka'ich Dashi.
Ka'ich Deshi.
Achawa. Oops, sorry.
Achawe.
Atut Ajiwatan Awa.
Atut Ajiwatan Awe.
Good. Hastusik.
Hastusik.
Good. Chonich nach satit.
Unich nach Satit.
Good. Ya kasha dehani.
Yakasha Dehani.
Dusik.
Dusik.
Sahanten wugut.
Sahanten Wugut.
Yahin.
Yahin.
And then this last word, repeat after me. Right here. Khayachte.
Kayachte.
Khayachte.
Good. And do this line. Do tu wow sigu.
Utuwaw
Utuag
sigu.
Sigu.
Yahin yiktach.
Yahin Yiktach.
And we'll go to here. So the first two words. Se'at or se'at ihin.
Se'atihin.
And then the next two. Ke akawuk wajih.
Ke Akawak Wajib.
Good. Tle adana.
Le'adana.
Adina.
Dujindach.
Tejindach.
Good. So that's as far as we'll go for pronunciation practice. And I'll just set this up in front of you guys since I don't have these ones set up for translation yet, but it's pretty quick and easy to do. Now you can see how to do it. So I'm just going to copy my slide. We're in our next segment of 1 minute to 1:30. And I'm just going to go in and clear my little template and start putting in our next words. So here we have a question mark, and I'll do a few of these. So for our next line, we have, kasha dehanich. Have you guys seen this phrase before? Kasha dehani.
No.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna look it up together. And since all three words are capitalized, I'm taking that as a term of its own. I'm gonna copy all three words into our book. Okay. There's a CH added to it, which in storytelling, when you add a CH to a person's name or title, you're bringing attention to that person. And so in this story, we've been talking this whole time about this girl, Sahan. Now we're talking about somebody else. We're capitalizing their name. And we're basically saying by adding this CH to their name that, okay, now we're talking about this person. So if we say their kindness or they did this or their daughter, we're talking about this new person. We're no longer talking about Sahan. So in storytelling, when you're reading a story, keep your eye out for the CH because it's telling you that we're introducing a new character and now we're talking about this person. So I'm gonna take off the CH in my search and just look up Kasha Dehani and see what we come up with. Okay, in our glossary, we have leader. If we look at the breakdown of how we describe a leader in Lingit, stands toward the head of the people. So Kasha would be people's heads, and then De would be towards, and then Han is the meaning for one person to stand. So you can think of this phrase as the person who's standing toward the head of the people. In other words, their leader, Kasha Dehani. So go ahead and repeat this phrase after me, and then I'll let you guys go. Kasha Dehani.
Kasha dehan.
Kasha Dehani.
Good. And I'm just going to copy this translation into mine. When we add ya, what does that mean? Yeah. We will put it as this. this leader. And that's where we're gonna leave off for the day. Good job, you guys. Any quick questions or comments? You guys want to continue this one on Wednesday?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, then I'll see you on Wednesday. It'll be our last class. Good night, Johan.